Well, we'll go and kick this off. I know, appreciate everybody attending, but yeah, this webinar today will be around Leica Register 360 and kind of a workflow. It's going to be kind of a unique style today. My name is Justin DeVore, not showing up here, but this is David McQuillan's webinar. He pre-recorded it for us, but he got called out to do a job out in Alabama. So he's out there, but basically I'm going to go ahead and play his webinar, and then I will be here in the background answering any questions on the chat and so forth. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the chat. But yeah, this is David McQuillan. He's a senior reality capture specialist here at ATG. His email address is listed there, as well as yatg@atgusa.com. If you have any additional webinar ideas or things you want to know or for us to present or host on, feel free to email that, as well as if maybe you want a copy of this webinar or send it to somebody else. Okay. Couple housekeeping items. So if you haven't checked out our YouTube page, I highly recommend it. We are coming out with content all the time, and we have a variety of disciplines that we have specialists in, like myself and David. We're here on the reality capture side. We are solely focused on reality capture. So we have a playlist out there specifically there. You can see here at the bottom, reality capture. But we also have a bunch of Revit and AutoCAD and Civil 3D gurus out there hosting things, as well as Esri and Bluebeam. So go and check that out. That's just ATG USA on there on YouTube. And then also follow us on LinkedIn and, like I mentioned, YouTube already. Because yeah, new content, new blogs, white papers, those kinds of things, especially specifically around reality capture. Anytime there's a new device coming out or new updates, say to the BLK to go or RTC 360 or really anything out there, we usually kind of have a blog, white paper, and we'll do kind of a video around it. So a lot of ways to stay informed. Then we're also partnered with Bimbox. They make our computers, and these are really unique because they're built specifically for our industry. They are made to handle point clouds, so they're not just really fast gaming computer. They're not meant for that. They're more meant for what we do. So whether it be point clouds or really fast modeling and hosting a lot of data. So I'm currently running one right now, and I haven't had any crashes, like you typically do. You just kind of expect it to crash by noon every day. And then we are also partnered with Leica Geosystems for your total stations, laser scanning devices and things like that. So if you have any questions about different LiDAR type scanners, go ahead and reach out to us, and we'll inform you on the product and make sure that you get the right tool for the job. And basically here, we're going to, as far as the webinar, what we'll be covering in Register 360 today, we're gonna go through, well, you'll hear David go through how to navigate, import, and process all of your data, and specifically around the Leica LiDAR scanning data workflow. And today's agenda, or what we're going to be learning about today, again, navigating through the software. We'll do some importing and some registration, also the different publishing types and the different data types we can publish as well. So, like I said, if you have any questions throughout, I'll be here in the background, but I'm going to go and queue up David's presentation.
Hello, this is an introduction to Register 360. This is the Register 360 version with the Publisher Pro version. When you open up Register 360, this is the first window you'll see. It's called the Project Explorer. And as you can see here, it has, first of all, our recently used projects, could also go to all projects. Since I only have two, they're representing the same. And then we also have a search box here as well. If you have multiple versions of the same project, you can drop down here, and whatever one is in bold is the one that's activated. Let's go ahead and create a new project. Otherwise, we could select one here and then go to open. But I'm going to go and do create new and give it a name. Now this project is going to be stored in your root folder, which I'll show you where that is and how to change it here soon. First, I'd like to point out the different areas of the software. So up here we have our toolbar. And we have our Explorer panel on the left, the data view in the middle, and the properties panel on the right. First thing we're presented here with is a background image. Most of the time, none would work well, especially if you're scanning inside. But otherwise, what it does is you can search an address and then it'll have an image going on in the background. Or you could also just upload an image file from here as well. For now, I'm going to click none. Let's go over some of these import options here on the Explorer panel. First of all, we have the drag files here. This would be a good option if you scanned with the RTC 360, in which case you have your files located on the thumb drive. And what I would do, depending on the size of the project, you could either essentially drag and drop the folder on the RTC 360 thumb drive and drop it here, or you can copy it over your desktop first. If it was a larger project, I'd recommend copying it over to a local drive and then bringing it over here because it would run faster that way. Next is BLK 360. So this is a Wi-Fi transfer between your computer and the BLK 360. Then we have the BLK to go, which is the same thing, Wi-Fi transfer. And then the Field 360, which again is a Wi-Fi transfer, but can also be done hardlined as well. And any of the Wi-Fi connections, you'll need an IP address and a port number, and then you do a test connect, and it'll tell you if it connected successfully or not, and then you do add to project. And then equally, as the drag files here, you can also browse files. And both the drag files and the browse files would also be the ways that you would import, let's say, a text file containing control point values for your targets if you were going to register with targets. Let's go up here to the toolbar. And first, let's go to settings. So first of all is units. Length unit, basically foot meaning decimal foot or foot and inch. I'd recommend decimal foot. And then the unit type would be International US Survey. That sort of depends on what state you're in. I believe most states are in US Survey, but some, say like Arizona, is an international. And then we have our temperature units. If you were to display thermal data from a BLK 360. And then down here under import, I'd have these two checked. And then your default may be in a balance mode. If you have a new enough computer that you believe the hardware is fast enough, I'd recommend going to fast. And then the panel image as well can speed up your import process as well. You can go to your 5K resolution all the way down to your 1K resolution. So usually the 2048 is a good medium. And then the export, so export clean points. So this is saying if you had cleaned up your point cloud in your data view, in your review and optimize tab, do you want to export with those sort of cleanings done in them? So I suggest that's turned on. The links, so we have red, yellow, and green link colors, and those are dependent on the sort of values that you would place in here and the amount of error that you would want in each one. Licenses, cloud to cloud, filtering, rendering. Next, let's go into the projects in storage. This is actually a really interesting tool, and I believe it's underutilized. So I'm going to spend some time in here. First of all, we have active and connected. For example, we can deactivate those, and then they would not be in our Project Explorer window when we first open up. A good option is this export tool. So these specifically for archive. So if you're going to deactivate it and not want it in your project, maybe a good idea would be to archive it and then put it on another drive or something, just to have a historical database instead of it living on your local computer here. The export project archive is going to give you an .raf file, and that .raf is going to be a compressed single file, and that's a really great way to archive your projects or to share your projects with other people. Instead of going through the publishing and, let's say, giving them an E57 or something like that, you can deliver an RAF, and that'll basically retain sort of the certain conditions of this whole entire project, even if you are not completely done registering. Let's say you did half of it and then you needed to go do something else and one of your coworkers could take over. These archive options would be good. The other one is an export fast archive, and that's essentially without the compression, and so it'll represent itself in several different smaller files. I'd recommend just doing this RAF format. It just keeps things a little more simple. Then we have the import button. So that's basically a way that you can import those RAF files, and that'll become a little more clear when I go into the storage tab here. But I do want to note that you can select different storages. And then, of course, also the migrate projects to this server, folder relocate to, and then again, just a new folder location that you can designate in the storage tab. So this is simply if you're wanting to stay on your same computer, but just move these projects somewhere else, let's say on a larger hard drive that you just cleaned up for something, or on a server, things like that. Let's hop over to the storage tab. So what you can do here in this storage folder is basically go to your file explorer, create a new folder. When you've created the new folder, you can click add, and then you can go ahead here and rename the name of that storage. And then, of course, once you do that, you can change the default storage. So this again would be a really good solution. Let's say you did an initial install, and it just defaulted everything to your C drive, but really you have, a several terabyte, D drive or data drive that you'd rather have these projects live on. I recommend adding another storage location and then changing your default. But then once you've done that, you're going to want to reconnect. That's basically going to point back to that new folder that you created, and that pointing is where you're going to interact with this import button here. So really a lot of great tools in here. Everybody who has worked with scan data can know that the data size can get quite large, especially in larger projects. And so data management is very important. So I recommend spending a little more time here in the projects and storage button. So now I'm going to bring in some RTC 360 data as if I was taking it off the thumb drive. So in its raw format, I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop it. A couple things I want to note here right off the bat is we haven't imported the data yet, but it's already starting to basically do its registration. And that's really one of the amazing and powerful things about the Viz technology on the RTC 360. If you're not familiar with what Viz is, um, there's cameras on the RTC 360 that are there to get the 360-degree imagery, just like a lot of other scanners out there. But there's additional cameras that basically do live tracking. And so let's say, for example, if we're in the field and we had the Field 360 app open and we're scanning, it would show the setups like the way they are, but it would also uniquely show your location because of the Viz technology. Something else is that there's also a GNSS device located inside the RTC 360, and so it does actually register your location. And because it does register your location, if I go ahead and turn on that background image like I was showing before, it'll automatically detect where this scan took place. So I just went here and then did get image. Go ahead and cancel that because I already got the image. And then I press this place by geo coordinates. And so as you can see, it's not exactly perfect. What we can do is just hold down control and we can shift things. But of course, this is really more for visualization, the real registration and things like that we're going to do after the fact in review and optimize tab up here. So basically now that we have dropped in this RTC 360, we can select which jobs or sections we're going to bring in here. So if you're wondering why there's two different jobs here, that probably means that the scanner was turned off while doing this initial collection and then was turned back on. And so it's sort of treating them as two different pieces of data, but nothing to worry about there. We can add those together in the Review and Optimize tab. So let's go over here to my Properties panel here on the right side. And when we bring these in, we did not have any targets, black and white or spherical, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that one off. The auto cloud is what I would do if there was no field registration. Basically, if I didn't use Field 360 in an iPad, I would select auto cloud and then it would try to do some initial registration automatically for me. If you click Smart Align, that's basically an option where it's going to try to use it. You can have an option of doing it either with by time or by distance, things like that. Typically, the auto cloud will work just fine on its own. And then, of course, if you did use Field 360, you can go ahead and select pre-registered, and it's going to go ahead and use that initial registration first. After that, I'd go ahead and press import. All right, now that I have imported this RTC 360 data through the import tab, I am now in the review and optimize tab up here. and it came in, everything was linked correctly. I just went ahead and deleted some links for this example to show you. And really what I wanted to show you here is that now that I've sort of broken up the data in different sections, the way that this Register 360 handles that is through different bundles. So, just sort of to summarize that, you have the initial job or project that you imported here with, and then within that you can have different bundles, right? And then I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to add a sitemap. What I can do is I can add these bundles to this different sitemap, right? The reason why I would do that, now let's say in sitemap 1 right now, which is called the job 057, which has 3 bundles, and sitemap 2 has 2 bundles. Let's say one is floor 1 and floor 2, and we want to just basically register that data separately. That way the data from floor 1 isn't getting in the way. We can always combine these back later. Let's say we had another sitemap, and that was the stairwells. So, we could figure out all the stairwells separately, figure out the first floor, the second floor, any of the floors, and then just put those all together in one sitemap at the end and go ahead and publish that. But another way you could use the sitemap here is if you've used Register 360 before, if you don't have your links done, if you're not registered, it actually won't let you publish. So what you can do to sort of get around that is if you have a certain area that you just want exported, but you're not quite done with the whole entire thing yet, go ahead and just create another sitemap, finish all of the registering inside that sitemap, and then you can go ahead and publish that individually without completing the other sitemap. So the reason why I keep bringing this all up is just sort of understanding the data organization between the project, the sitemap, the bundles, and then now we have to the individual setups. And then one more component in all this is the link. So just sort of breaking all those different steps down, how they all interact there. So let's go ahead and combine some of these bundles here. Let's see here. So combining a setup is the same exact way that you would combine the bundles, because again, it goes back to just creating a link. So what I could do is I could just use these two select basically both nodes, right, or setups. And I did that with the selection tool up here, but also I could just click on one, hold down Control, and click on another one. So now that we've basically identified the two and selected the two that we're going to be working with, we could go ahead with Auto Cloud, Match Targets, Visual Alignment, or Split View. I'd recommend going with the Visual Alignment right here. And right now we're using a top view. So we could do usually corners or some sort of wall, like a vertical object is good here. And what's nice about this is if you get it close, as close as you can, usually the join optimize will take care of the rest here. So here's the top view. Let's go ahead and take a look at the side view, and we can move it up and down here as well. I'd really recommend doing both, the top view and the side view, just because something might look right from the top, but the elevations could be totally off for some reason, especially if you have experience working in a stairwell or something. So let's just separate these. I'll show you a couple other tools here. Here's the rotate tool. So if it was, came in completely in the wrong direction, we can go ahead and rotate that. Go back to the move tool here and just do the same thing. So we can move both pieces. Go. So then once we're happy with that, let's go ahead and move the So you saw that I had the warning message that the link did not seem viable, so I just went ahead and removed that background image. It was in this tab here, and just right-clicked and removed that one, just so I can see this a little more clearly. What you can do as well in the sitemap view is just go ahead and move the whole thing to sort of get it closer. All right, now let's go ahead and select these two. Let's go visual alignment. There we go, that one worked. Okay, link was added successfully. Found 9 additional link candidates. Okay, now that those 2 different sections have now merged into a single bundle, we have one more bundle left in this sitemap. So I'm gonna go and add those, but before I do that, I'm gonna show you a couple different view settings here. So one is we have just this one setup selected, and we can go show in cloud viewer, and then now we're just looking at this in a single way. Let's say I wanted to look at this as just this bundle. So this is basically the progress we have so far. This is one bundle. Let's go back to sitemap, and we go over here and select this one, and then look at this separated piece of data as its own bundle as well. And also the same way of the show in cloud viewer here that I showed you with the right click. Let's go ahead and just do this setup cloud. So same tool. Basically, we just want to look at it again to the individual level there. So let's go ahead and merge these together. First, I'm going to go ahead and just move this around. All right, that looks pretty good. There, I'm looking basically right here. I'm going to go ahead and hold control. So I have these two selected. I'm going to go to visual alignment. All right, that looks pretty close. Let's look at the side view. That looks good. I'll show you one thing here. Especially in outdoor scan, sometimes the tilt can be off. So just to show you, you can go ahead and basically move this up and down. If you're doing sort of long, like corridors or working a lot outside with different elevation changes and things like that, I'd recommend also taking a look at this correct tilt. So at the side view, top view, correct tilt, and also this rotate here. Okay, so now we have all this done, and we can take a look at it here in the bundle view. So we have basically the whole thing connected. Now remember, we still have, so this is the sitemap 1 with bundle, it's all bundled together, and we still have this sitemap 2, which is sort of existing in its own separate space for now. Now let's say we're happy with this, and if we go ahead and do some other changes to the data, but we really want to make sure that this the links aren't changed, we could lock all these links here. So I mentioned earlier sort of a floor 1, floor 2 example. So let's go ahead and just sort of play into that a little bit more. So let's rename this to floor 1, and then let's rename these here. So go floor, starting with 1, paddings, go 0, 0, 1, obviously depending how many setups we plan on having or whatever, but creating the padding would be good. So basically it's going to go floor 0, 0, 1, there we go, floor 1, 0, 0, 1, and then continuing floor 1, 0, 0, 2, and then continuing obviously with the second sitemap. Once we get that sort of figured out, we can rename those, and that'll be floor 2, and it's just a good way to keep the data organized. Okay, let's keep working on here on sitemap 2. Basically, how I would do this is take a look at each one of the bundles. All right, looks like we got a driveway here, the garage. Let's go back to sitemap. Select this other piece. Okay, we got the connection with the garage there. Back to sitemap. Go ahead and bring these two closer. This. Let's go ahead and line these up closely. Select the other one here. Visual alignment. Just like that. Looks good. Okay. Press no for now. You can press no for the adding the new links there, especially because once it's all finished, you're going to optimize the whole entire thing, and it can make those links on its own. All right, let's take a look at this last piece here. Okay. This one might be a little more difficult because it's not showing exactly the same like features we're viewing over here. But I'm going to make an assumption. Yep, there we go. Okay. So even though this was the backside and I wasn't sharing something similar like the garage like I was doing before, identified that basically these corner shapes representing here and here and here would line up. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this in the sitemap. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on a setup here, hold down shift, and that line's going to come out. So I'm holding down shift and I'm holding down my mouse. I'm just going to go ahead and rotate that until it looks like it would get close enough. And then align it. And I could go ahead and click on this sort of assumed link here, and it'll give me those same options, but I just sort of use the same method each time. All right. Looks like we might have a little more rotation there. Oops. See how it does with that. So let's give that another shot. Alrighty, so I tried to basically combine those two bundles in the sitemap 2 a couple times, and it kept on giving me the warning that the link didn't seem viable. So instead of keep fighting on that, I'm going to go ahead and use basically the power of the different sitemaps here. And I'm just going to combine this bundle 4 to this sitemap, and I'm going to try to work off of that instead. I think I might have better luck there. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, this looks like the back area that this other bundle might connect to. Go. So the initial alignment there. You can see there's still a little bit of separation, but let's try to connect these here. Let's use this corner, these two here. Okay, we got a little tilt, so or rotation. Let's go ahead and fix that. Go. That there. A little bit of height. Let's try that one. All right, so now that we've got that done, we just have one more part in the second sitemap to add to the complete project here. So let's go ahead and just drag and drop that up. Get that close. And let's use these two here. Looks good. All right, so there we go. We basically took, geez, probably what, 6 different bundles, 2 different sitemaps, combined them all into a single registered data set here. Another example of this could be is if, let's say, you had a BLK 360 data and RTC 360 data, and you imported them all into the same project. Well, they would represent themselves as different sitemaps and different bundles, but not to worry. You can always combine them using basically the same exact workflow that you would do between one setup and the next. And you can also rename them to help keep your data more organized. So here we are in the Finalize tab. We just finished up with the review and optimize. And we can go ahead and press accept. and then accept, and that'll bring us to our publishing tab. But I want to cover a couple things here. Let's say we did have several sitemaps in here. We could go ahead and select and deselect those, just in case we didn't want to move forward with certain sections, or we wanted to basically export them separately. This is sort of a preview here of what we do have here in our bundle and our sitemap, and then some general statistics, which are going to be covered more in depth in the report tab, which is basically the publishing tab, really. So go ahead and click on that sitemap, accept. Okay, here we go. So here are our publishing report options. So we can say certified by my name, my position, the company name, the company URL, and then if you wanted to give the report a name, and then where it's going to be saved. And then what's also interesting here as well is you can put your company logo, and it'll actually cover over this Leica Geosystems logo, and so it'll look like a very professional report there. So, it gives you all the statistics, the overlap, and the error amounts. We didn't have any targets in this one, but it give you a target error. Yeah, so let's go over here to publishing options. So we have LGS file, and I'm going to cover that quite a bit in my Register 360 Part 2 video. But basically, that is a Leica Geosystems type of file, and that is basically what you would use in both your CloudWorks plugins for your Civil 3D or your Navisworks or your Revit, but also very importantly for your Leica Jetstream viewer software, which is a free software. Use an example here. The export options are really great. So it kind of gives you some basic statistics, setups, UCS. Again, UCS is something I'm going to cover more in my second video. The name, and then include all the point cloud data, any of the measurements you had done while collecting, and then the panoramic images, and then also the resolution of the images. So, and then as well as a password, which is interesting. The pano images is interesting because I know there's some situations where photos aren't allowed in the collection spaces, so you can go ahead and just eliminate those on the export. But then while using them for the processing, you'd still get the colorization. And then also to create a smaller file size, you could use a lower resolution pano image as well. And you have your TrueView options, your Jetstream Enterprise options, which is basically loading it up to a specific server, PTS, PTG, PTX, E57, all common point cloud formats, and then RCP. So just want to note something here. If you wanted it, as we would call a unified point cloud, where it's all just one single file, no images, very common export for Revit, you would just use this RCP cloud and then just leave it like that. But let's say if you wanted to continue to work in Recap Pro and you want the images, you want the separate setups, you go out here and select the different setups here as well. And that concludes my introduction to Register 360.
So yeah, that was David kind of going over part 1 of Register 360. So far, are there any other questions? I saw that Jose had reached out earlier asking if we can save to a network instead. And really the answer to the question there is yes, you could do a network, but I highly recommend staying as close to your local machine as possible, whether it's a C or D drive. I have installed an additional hard drive on my machine, a 4 terabyte hard drive, to be able to do this. So I have basically do all my registering on my D drive, and then when it comes to export the LGS or RCP or whatever I'm delivering, I'll push that to the network or to a Dropbox or BIM 360 or however we're doing that. Any other questions? All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, we'll go and close this out. Thank everybody for attending, and you can go and reach out to us if you want a copy of the presentation and so forth. Appreciate everybody attending.